If that desire to live in peace beside your neighbors had superseded the desire to stockpile rockets, it would all be different.
When a country is at war, it is exactly what it sounds like. They are at war. How do people criticize and question the methods when a country is at war for its survival? What we have seen, what unfolded on October 7 in the south in Gaza, and then what happened October 8th in the north from Lebanon, from Hezbollah. Israel, a tiny country smaller than the size of New Jersey, is fighting for its survival. The enemies were hoping to annihilate Israel. That was their dream, that October 7 and October 8 is going to be the end of Israel. They did not succeed. They failed. Israel had to mobilize itself and try to figure out, how do we deal with this type of a warfare where civilians are being used as human shields, that Hamas does not care about the Palestinians that are there. They are dispensable to them, and they use them as human shields. The world has seen it, where the basis of terror was in schools and kindergartens and hospitals, everything possible to use others as the human shields. To question Israel and to question its methods is so off the charts. Many have been questioning why Israel does what it has done to Gaza with its blockade, with holding back whatever. What other country in the world is at war with an enemy and gives it electricity and gives it water? Shouldn't Israel just isolate them and annihilate them? But that's not what's happened. There's no other enemy in the world that's at war that you give them electricity, food, provisions. Israel is fighting the most difficult war and in the most humane way. I would like you to listen to this interview and realize and understand how ignorant people can be when they don't realize what Israel's dealing with and what you have to do when you're at war. And Israel has taken so many precautions to limit the civilian casualties at its own costs. We lost over 800 beautiful soldiers, predominantly because they were doing surgical operations at their own risk to try to prevent civilian casualties.
Why is there a blockade? Well, I mean, the argument from Israel would be...
No, why do you think?
I would say, okay, I think that the disengagement, I think Smotrich was correct when he said, that, I'm sorry, my mistake there. I think which another quote that I'm sure you're familiar with, but Dov Weisklav, who was the senior advisor to Sharon, was the prime minister at the time. He essentially said, the reason we're doing the disengagement, the reason we're doing this is so that we can put the peace process in formaldehyde. This is the reason we're doing it.
You're not answering my question. You're continuing to cite very right-wing Israeli politicians. But what do you think is the reason?
I'm getting there. I'm saying, so I think they disengaged in order to kill the peace process. I think they put the full blockade around the country for the reason that they've always kind of done it there, that, yeah, they don't want too much stuff getting in. They want to keep them, as they put it, on a diet, and they don't want rockets to fly into Israel.
The second one is a kind of important one, isn't it, the final
one
you said?
It is.
If the Palestinian leadership in Gaza after 2005 had not, from the get-go, decided to use Gaza as a stockpiling place for rockets to fire into Israel, all of it would be different. If they had just resisted the temptation that so many of us do in our lives to stop keeping RPGs in our cellars and then Katyusha rockets in our children's bedrooms, all of it could have been different. If that desire to live in peace beside your neighbors had superseded the desire to stockpile rockets, it would all be different.
Yeah, or if Israel just hadn't occupied them for 60 years, it would all be different too. I mean, why is the onus always on them?
Well, you believe in self-determination, I'm sure. Yes.
I believe in individual rights, yeah, sure.
Okay, individual rights. And that includes the right to make bad decisions. Sure. Yes. the Palestinians in Gaza, when they voted in Hamas, made a very bad decision.
Yeah, of course,
and
Douglas,
in the
but
years,
hang on.
And in the years after that, they made bad decision after bad decision. It was a very bad decision to continually fire thousands of rockets into Israel. It was a very bad decision to use what boats came in early on and to use the smuggling networks from Egypt, not to bring in supplies you could actually build a thriving society with, but to bring in rockets. It was a very bad idea. No, there was not starvation in Gaza after 2005. No, there was no deficit of goods coming in. I've been plenty of times.
There was no deficit?
No, there are
no
plenty
goods were kept out.
There are plenty. How many? Have you been to the crossing points?
No.
When were you last there at all?
I've never been.
You've never been?
Well, am I not allowed to talk about it now? I've never been to. Have you ever been to Nazi Germany? Are you allowed to have feelings about them?
You can't time travel, but you can.
Right.
But you can travel.
Okay, but so what? So what's the point? Like,
No,
okay.
I find that
lots
very...
of people have been there and agree with me, and lots of people have been there and agree with you.
Yeah, but
so I
if
don't
you're
know
going to
what
spend a year and a half talking about a place, you should at least do the courtesy of visiting it.
All right. I just think this is a non-argument.
You don't
but
think?
Okay. No, I think it's a non-argument.
But if you're an expert,
Well, you have to go and touch the ground.
No, I think you have to see. I think it's a good idea to see stuff, particularly if you
Okay.
spend a career talking about something. Yes. I have a journalistic rule of trying never to talk about a country even in passing unless I've at least been there.
Okay.
It's
but that's
sort of
not
normal. It's a normal thing to do. You're talking about. Hang on. You're talking about crossing points, and not only have you never been to a crossing point in either Egypt or in Israel, but you've never even been to the region.
Okay. Again, I
How
think this is
can
a
you-
non-argument.
Hang
I
on,
don't
no,
understand.
No, it's not a non-argument.
Yeah, it is.
It's not a non-argument if you're insisting that you're an expert of some kind, or not claiming you're an expert, but still talking about it, about the provisions going into Gaza or not, if you've never seen any of this going on.
So you're not
That's
allowed to
amazing
speak
to
about
me.
things that you've read about. You can only speak about things that you've seen with your own eyes.
You can talk about what you want, as you're proving. But that is a different matter from spending an awfully long amount of time talking about an issue in a region you haven't even had the courtesy to visit, whilst developing all of these views about it. I mean, now I slightly get an idea of where you're coming from. You've read about this blockade, and so you imagine that that's what it is. I imagine you've read all the people who say that Gaza was a concentration camp, and you probably think that too. Am I right?
I mean, again, literally a concentration camp. It shares a lot of similarities, I would think.
Wow. Well, as I say, you can't time travel
Let's go
back to the
back to the
Nazi era.
let's
but
go
you
back to
could
the
go
blockade.
to the Middle
Okay.
East and actually visit it.
Okay,
It's
the
not
World
hard to do.
Bank said in 1996 for the 1
Now the
year of the
libertarians
blockade.
are quoting the World Bank. I love it.
It doesn't mean anything. This is a non-argument. Yes, I'm saying the World Bank did their own analysis of this, and they said that
Why
it was a
don't
40%
you do your
of the,
own analysis?
Hold on. You got to stop
Christ.
interrupting
Okay.
and let him finish
I
the
will.
sentence.
The
Fire
World
away.
Bank said that 40% drop in the GDP of 1 year due to the blockade, and there's been a blockade from 2007 on. So are you saying that this hasn't had an economic effect? Is that the argument?
No, of course it'll have an economic effect.
So you're saying
But-
you have to be on the ground and do an audit of the blockade
No,
in order to be able to
I
comment
think
on
you
it?
should at least know what it is, what the territory is, what the situation is in the region. Yes, absolutely.
And the only
Absolutely.
way to do that is to be there in person.
I think that's the best way. It's not the only way, but it's the best way, for sure. For sure. If you have never seen the countries in question, you've never spoken to the people in question, you've never interviewed anyone, you've never gone around, you've never seen the terrain, and so on, and you've used Wikipedia, I'm sorry, no, that's not the same thing.
Okay, well, I've not just used Wikipedia, but didn't you write a big piece when the war in Ukraine first came out titled something like, I've been to Ukraine and they can win, they can repel the Russians? So you could go there and still get it wrong, right?
No, I was with the Ukrainian armed forces in 2022 when they were retaking territory from the Russians.
Right, the last time they had any advances, yeah.
Yeah,
right.
I said I can see how they could win, which would be advances like that, yeah.
You said if we just fund them, or if we just
No,
arm
no, I
them,
didn't
that they
say
can then
I said,
they can
I
repel.
said that the Ukrainian army was making great successes, which it was when I was with them in the fall of 22.
Okay, listen, there were lots of
But-
people who went to Iraq and said, we'll be greeted as liberators, and
I
it'll
know,
be paid for in oil, and democracy will spread through the region. So I don't know. Either take on the arguments or don't, but I don't
But
think
I'm saying,
like...
but your argument's incorrect.
Oh, okay, fine. Well, then present a counter argument to it. But to just tell me I'm not allowed to talk about something
I'm
because
not
I'm not
saying
an
you're
expert.
not allowed to
okay,
talk
fine. Well,
about
you're
it.
not
I
an
said
expert, so you
repeatedly,
shouldn't
you're
talk
talking
about
about
it.
it
You haven't
now.
been there. Yeah, I know. But you keep playing this game where it's like the whole opening to this podcast was like the non-experts talking about this is such a problem. Now you're saying because I haven't been there, I can't talk about it. Is there a blockade there that's causing economic devastation or not? According to the World Bank, there is.
First of all, I don't think it's a game. I don't think it's a game at all.
Me neither.
I'm not playing a game.
Okay, but this is semantics.
No, but this is important. I've seen plenty of this up close. I've seen plenty of this with my own eyes because I do believe that one of the things you should do if you're talking about something is to see it.
Yeah, you've established
Okay,
that.
but
Is there a
that's-
blockade?
The blockade that existed, to the extent it existed, was a blockade to try to make sure that the Israelis and the Egyptians knew what materials were going in and out of Gaza after the first rocket fires, when Hamas, in fact, before Hamas was elected. The Israelis and the Egyptians didn't do a very good job of it, were meant to be trying to make sure that the materials that went into Gaza were not materials that could be used to build up the Gaza-Hamas war machine. The reason why trucks get searched is not because the Israelis want to search through grain or flour. It's because they wanted to stop the trucks containing the arms and the munitions that the Gazan, Hamas, and Islamic Jihad fighters were going to use to fire against Israel. And I'm sorry, it just makes the most obvious strategic sense. As the late great Joan Rivers once said, if as an appeal to authority.
That one I'll allow. That one I like.
She also said that Michelle Obama's a man.
Yeah, I know she did that.
No, I'm saying she
That
got
seems to
everything
be
right.
funny.
So continue. Go ahead.
But as Joan Rivers said, if New York was being rocketed from New Jersey, we would level New Jersey. I don't think you need to level it, by the way. But you would at least try to make sure that rockets weren't being imported in larger quantities into New Jersey.
Of course.
Okay, that's all the Israelis were doing.
And that is the truth of the matter, that Israel was doing whatever it needs to do to be able to protect itself. And to pick on Israel about the blockade, well, the way he concluded the conversation is, think about New York, New Jersey. If New Jersey was sending rockets onto New York, what would New Jersey turn into? I think about it all the time. If Tijuana, Mexico, begins sending rockets into San Diego, what would San Diego do? So it's very important for a person to put yourself in a position. Our sages write in the book of ethics of our fathers, don't judge a person until you're standing in their feet. And he called him out on that and says he has never been to Israel, has never been to Gaza. He has no clue what's going on. He's basing his whole opinion on what he reads, really, in the media, in the fake news media, etc. I mean, a scholar needs to be a little smarter than that. And he's right. You need to go and see with your own eyes. So let's pray and hope that people become educated, not just by what they read, but rather what they see in real life and real person. Spend some time in Israel, get to know the Israelis, get to know the neighbors, and see if you could survive that. God bless you. God loves you.